man. Cool.
Leave the C out, and then that's how you say it.
Mensch. Yeah, that's cool, man. Dude, I can't thank you enough for being with me today, calling in from across the pond. Let me tell everybody who I've got on today. For today's episode of the Jeff Robertson Show, we've got Joshua Fineman, founder of Mensch, a men's community dedicated to helping guys show up more fully in life for themselves, their families, and the world around them. Josh's journey took him from finance to running a creative agency and ultimately into coaching and men's work. But it wasn't success that shaped him the most. And this is where I think it gets good. And this is a sweet spot I always tell everybody about. It was the burnout, the family crisis, and the wake up call that came when his wife said, "You need help." Now Josh is building spaces where men can drop the mask, lean on each other, and live with presence instead of pressure. From cold swims and fireside chats to honest conversations about worth, help, and connection. Man, you're filling a huge void that I see, and I have these conversations a lot with men. Joshua, you're filling a void that I don't know that is. It's so broad that there's not enough of us that can jump in there to help fill that. And it's really cool what you're doing. And I think this is what I wanted to really tee you off with when I was reading about you is I always preach, don't take advice from someone who hasn't walked in your shoes. And you've had to carry your own water through your own journey. And when you get on the
Mhm.
backside of that, you have all this value that you're able to provide. So I really appreciate you taking your struggles and your story and using that to your program that you have today. So man, welcome. Thank you for being here, dude.
Thank you, Jeff. Great to be here. Great to be here as one of the first with you with a clean shaven face as well. It's an honor.
That's right. Thanks, man. Everybody's going to be like, "Who's the new guy on the Jeff Robertson Show?" Um, my, I think it is my daughter's 13. When you were got me thinking, my daughter's 13 now. I think it's the first time she's seen me clean shaven, and she's like mind blown from the whole situation. So it's been pretty fun watching them. They're like, "Holy crap, who's this guy?" One more
Yeah,
way for me to
amazing.
embarrass my 13-year-old, right? You tell me what's a day in your life look like, dude?
um, I'll pick my favorite day, which is my Fridays. Because maybe that'll give you a little insight into the rest of my journey. But Friday mornings I run uh, something called Mensch mornings. I have a friend and kind of like a business collaborator down the road to me who has a little farm site, and we go there every Friday morning after I drop my kids off at school. And a local community of guys come, and we'll do some yoga together. We'll have a swim. We'll have a sauna, and then we'll sit together outside in a circle with a fresh coffee, and each man will get 5 minutes just to share what's going on for them. Could be a win, could be a challenge, could be anything. And every Friday morning, I leave that space feeling completely recharged, re-energized, and then I move into the rest of my day, which will be a combination of coaching different kinds of men, to being with my kids, to uh, probably making dinner for Friday night for my family. And then Friday night we have like a Jewish tradition of a Friday night dinner where the whole family comes together, and we've got little rituals that we carry out. So it's like a day of amazing rituals, basically, whether that's with my community, with the men I support, or with my family.
Dude, that's really awesome. How many fellas do you have in your group?
It changes week to week. We've probably got now locally maybe, I don't know, 100 guys or so who have been a part of it or in some shape or form. But in terms of like on a weekly basis, it could be anything as little as me and my mate who owns the farm site, or I don't know, 10 or 12 of us, and maybe once a year we'll have a gathering of 20 to 25 of us or so. So it's really nice and intimate. And actually, it's funny because I have a friend who runs a really, in a material sense, a very successful, big scale, giant global business. And he said to me the other day, he was like, "Oh, how's Mensch going? Is it growing?" And that was the question he asked. And my response was like, I don't know, man. Sometimes it grows, sometimes it contracts, sometimes it's flat, but I don't really care. I'm not doing this for that reason. I'm honestly, I'm doing it for me and sharing it from there. And I think that's been incredibly liberating, if I compare it to what I put into the previous businesses that I was a part of.
I think it's where we, you know, it's easy. It would be really easy for Joshua to get caught up in numbers. And that's not the
Mm,
purpose, man. That's what I heard. Like, it's not, I'm here to help who's coming in to see me. And that might be one person today. It might be no persons today. It might be 1,000 people today. But I am ultimately,
yeah,
I'm not focused on those overall numbers. Man, and Josh, that gets overlooked. I'm 100% guilty of chasing the a revenue goal, or just for my
yeah,
own,
sure.
like, hey, if I'm going to make this work, this is what I got to have, and
Yeah.
overlooking that organic growth that comes with being someone who likes to help people.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've got a part of me that gets stuck in that place as well. But I think I've just learned over time from putting so much energy into that part of me that needs that kind of validation, to slowly start to recognize that, and over time reframe my relationship with money and success and having self-worth. And I'm also like, I'm not someone who walks around every second of the day like incredibly happy and joyful and purposeful. Like, I have an existential crisis every few months. I feel like the more into this work one gets, the more lost one can feel in it. So I certainly don't want to paint a picture that I don't feel those things as well. But I just notice in certain moments now that when someone throws a question like that at me, I'm very comfortable just saying, I mean, I suppose this week it's grown in some respects, and in other respects it hasn't. But as long as I'm growing through the process, and that's more important for me.
Yeah, and the other thing for the folks that's thinking, what, I'm going through a lot of crap right now. I'm going to run out and start my own coaching program. The other thing I
Mm,
think where you got to remember is, it's okay to do that, but timing's important. It's trying to help. What I've seen is making sure that you are mentally ready, all the stuff, and you've kind of got your situation to where it's under control and you're living in the lesson, not necessarily the moment. So I
yeah,
think that a lot of folks get wrong with that, is where they try to teach too soon, or they try to mentor
yeah,
too soon while they're going through, and they don't
yeah,
have all the pieces of the puzzle together. That's another one. And I wanted to point that out for the folks, because a lot of times someone like you will speak to me and they're like, well, I'm going to do the same thing. Right.
yeah,
I got some friends, like, they always asking me. And one of the things I think I messed up was trying to coach before. And you don't have to always have it all figure out, y'all, but
yeah,
you want to make sure that you're on the healing side, or that you're kind of through. You're never quite through your journey, but you want to make sure that you've got your life's kind of like houses in order before you start trying to help others. Because then if you're not careful, we all start pulling each other down when we're trying to live forward. And just a bright way to make sure that you apply that, I think.
yeah. I'm with you. And look, like, I was probably guilty of that when I started properly. So I was running my creative agency until just before COVID hit. And then I began the process, and it was just beautifully timed to step away from it. And then I spent the next year just like throwing shit against the wall and like just exploring. And that's when I got really heavily into the men's group space and coaching, and was asked to facilitate at the community that I was participating in. And then about a year or so into that experience, I felt I was plateauing. So I was like, I think I'm going to set up my own group. And at some point after that, I thought I would just go whole hog at running my own thing. And when I started, I think there was an element of me that wanted to prove that all of the work I was doing on myself was worth it. You know, I was in my like mid 30s. I had 3 kids. I'd zigzagged through career for the last 10 years. And I was like, I still haven't figured out what it is I want to do. I'm just going to jump in both feet into this thing. And I think the next few years, through nearly burning out again and trying to prove and feeling like I was competing with other people and I wasn't charging enough, and I was in the thoughts of how am I going to make this work, I was repeating the pattern that I'd repeated up to then, which was having one foot on the accelerator, but the other one on the brake. And the brake was the fear of failing, the fear of not being enough. And I needed to go through that with this as well. So for me, I would say, as a build on what you're saying, there's no right or wrong way to do it. But if you're going to do it the way I did it, then at some point, I really hope that you get to the realization I did, which was learning through the experience of trying to do this the quick way, which is like, you can't do this particular journey. It feels like there's no cheating. You know, because you're always going to be chasing something if you're trying to cheat your way through this. And this is, you know, Mensch means a person of integrity. This world, that's what it's about at the core. It's about integrity, and there's no bypassing. And those who do bypass generally aren't as fulfilled as the people that take their time. And like, my mentor is the perfect example of that. So yeah, I think that's what I would build on top of what you had to say.
Yeah, I want to come back to something that you said, because I think it's important, as you got your creative agency and things along those lines, to kind of walk through a little bit of your story, because you have a moment to where your wife says, dude, you need help. And
Yeah,
word is, tell us about that Josh, and what
sure.
that Josh was experiencing, and to make his, to kind of provoke those words
Yeah.
from your wife.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to give some context to the context. So I've always been very deep feeler, but very like happy-go-lucky kid on the outside. One of the jokers in my group, attention seeking. And on the inside, for a long time, there was a lot of, I wouldn't call it depression, but there was a lot of melancholy, and there was a lot of heaviness and a lot of deep thought. And I grew up in an environment where I had a very successful father as a businessman, and in a community where the makings of a man was basically, you go out, you earn money, and you give back through the money that you make. And I kind of felt a little bit like Simba to Mustafa. Like, how the hell am I gonna like get to that level or beat that level? And it was all right when I was at school and going through the education system, because I wasn't an academic, but I did pretty well. But then when I went into the working world, that feeling of pressure, and I have to get it right, and if I'm not good at this, then it means that I'm not good enough, was with me the whole way through my 20s. And I've been with my wife since I was 18. So really, from the age of 21, 22 to 31, when I became a father, she was carrying the weight of the struggle that I was feeling along the way. And every time I tried to share it with my parents, bless them, they wanted to fix and save me. So that wasn't what I needed. I didn't really want to share it with my friends, because it would feel like I was burdening them or maybe be judged by them. And so there was that kind of thing. So my wife very much became the person who saw the person behind the laughter and the lightness and the fun and the excitement. And she kind of became like my therapist, which is not a good thing to have as a wife. Not in terms of have a professional, have a wife who's a therapist, but lean on your wife in that sense as the only person to lean on emotionally. And so I kind of zigzagged through career, and I ended up moving more into a creative space. I was in finance, and that didn't work. So I went into film finance and film production, and I started a creative agency that focused on kind of film and video storytelling. And it did relatively well. Like, we weren't one of the biggest agencies in the world, but we were well known, good reputation, won awards, worked with brands that you would have heard of, and we for starting from nothing, we'd done really well. But there was still this thing in me of not being enough and not being good enough. And then we've got 3 kids. We had our first son when I was 31, I think, and or late 30s. And 3 months into having my son, my mum got in a life-changing car crash. She was in hospital for 3 months. She'd basically broken every bone in her body. The first 2 to 3 weeks, we didn't know whether she was going to live or die. And whilst I'd experienced death in my family before, it had never been so close to home. And I remember 2 weeks into this whole ordeal, and you can imagine, just being in the hospital every day, being there with my dad, for my dad, being there amongst people, making sure she's okay. Is she going to live? Is she going to die? Is she going to walk? Is she going to, amongst all of that, which one would imagine takes up most of the thoughts in your head. But most of the thoughts in my head, honestly, during that, or at least 50% of them, were still to do with work and still to do with versions of, am I enough and how am I going to succeed? And I came home from the hospital one evening, and my wife saw my eyes were heavy, and she always described back then a glazed look in my. I was there, but I wasn't really.
Somewhere along the lines, I lost you there, but it's coming back. So just give it a second. Sorry. Looks like we lost Joshua. He's calling in from London, so there is a little bit of a disconnect between um, he and I. So we'll give him a second to jump back on. But just think about it. One of the questions that I have for him when he comes back is, and I want you all to be thinking about it too, especially for the folks that struggle in these areas, is why is not good enough? We know there's some dad. We were talking with his, he was mentioning about his success of his father and leading into him. So that's a little bit of my curiosity as Joshua's stories unfolding that led him in to where he's at today. Is what does that look like? What is where does he where does that come from? Is that kind of our driving force, or does it come back in? Does it lean back in from other elements and inside of his life? Because I think I worked through some similar things in my own life to where, and here's a great example. And I've worked with some folks that experience a similar is we have when you're really good at something, um, or when you can excel at something, you take for granted everybody else can do it too sometimes. And at least that was me. So, like marketing and some of the other things that came easy to me, um, I struggled. Looks like Joshua's coming back in with us now. We're gonna pick back up the conversation with him as soon as he turns back. As soon as he gets his video back on, but he's probably talking away over there in England, and he had to stop
I'm
doing
here.
he had to have some tea time. Joshua had to break for tea time to come back in. But dude, I caught the most of that on what you were explaining, and here's something I wanted to ask you: where does the
Yeah.
all right? So I was telling the listeners in the audience that was there too of that while we had a pause while you were coming back in was my
Yeah. Sorry
question.
about that.
That's all right. No worries, man. It happens. My question was where does that uncertainty of good enough come from? Is that coming from your relationship with your dad, or where did that trickle into your life from?
That's a great question. And that is the question that the more into this work I get, the
Yeah.
deeper and deeper the answer gets, Um, I mean, I don't want to get too Freudian, um, but when I feel that feeling, when it comes up in me still, and I follow the feeling back, it's a very young feeling. It's about 5 to 6 years old, it feels like. And then there's another version of it that feels like a young teenager or someone who's just hitting puberty. And a lot of my memories that come up, there's obviously, stuff intertwined with dad. And then there's other stuff intertwined with mum. But then there's other stuff intertwined with sibling, like with my brother and with going to a highly pressurized school um and then I could go back really far, man, like
Yeah.
talking like generations of stuff, So the simple answer is that and through no fault of theirs at all, but I do see a lot of what happened in me was because of um, some things that happened in my mum and dad's life
Yeah.
that weren't fully processed or grieved. And I think a young child with an incredible capacity to feel, I absorbed a lot of that grief and I took it on as my own. And therefore, any inkling of my parents not being happy, I thought was about me, even if it was telling my brother off and not telling me off. So I know that there might be some listeners out there that can connect to that, and there might be others that don't quite grapple with that. And that takes a lot of reflection to process. But the thing that often helps me when I feel these very big feelings today, and I feel it in my body, it triggers things up in my whole body, is I try to follow the feeling back. Like if I go without thinking too much about it, if I follow it back, like how far back does that go? What does and it goes.
So if you're frozen up again, but here's what I wanted to unpack with the audience while Josh is this is very powerful. And because here's what you see is I've had folks on here, if you go back to some of my previous episodes, is I had some folks when we called it the Second Chance podcast there were some guys that were on here that they were like, there was one of my guests, I can't recall his name, I'll put it in the show notes, but his folks had both passed away when he was young, and he was raised by a neighbor, and he went on, he just knew what he had to do, and he was sent off to the neighbor had raised him, and he told an amazing story. He was like, when I graduated from school, my neighbor was like, okay, you got to go out into the world. And he found his way into finance with finance mentors. And he's absolutely a success story of just drive and figuring it out and being around the right people and knowing who he's supposed to be around. My journey's a little bit like more like Josh's, to where there was a lot of uncertainty, and I didn't know how to process feelings, emotions, things along those lines that sometimes hinder us, hold us back, and and what now you kind of can see as a more of a negative way, just because you don't quite understand. And this is what I would say is, when you, depending on how you process it, if you process things closer to like what Josh is explaining, to where you like to carry other people's blame or their guilt, and you like to take on other people's problems, and you try to solve things that sometimes aren't necessarily should be in your path. um, that was You'll see that a lot in public safety communities, folks who like to help, and folks that have that drive and that passion for helping people, is they'll have this opportunity, and versus them saying, you know what, this ain't got to do anything with me. This ain't. I don't mind carrying. I'm gonna carry you this far, and then you got to get off and figure it out yourself. Is That's more so like the first person I was describing. Is he's not going to get wrapped up into all of your things, and he's going to get you so far, and then you got to figure it out. It's and I would see someone like Josh, to where you're still processing things. And if you notice, we picked up on, there was some things he mentioned, to where just his folks, were how they process things. So he witnessed that. More than likely, Joshua's witnessed that as he's coming up, of how they negotiate through their own emotions and feelings, and maybe whatever that might be. But there's some influence from others, and we pick up on that as well. It's just what we do. Sometimes you're a sponge, and when you're picking up all the positive, if you're not careful, you pick up the negative too. The one thing I would tell um, Josh, as he's listening, um, and as he's making his way back in, so we only got a few minutes left, is one thing I would tell all of you. My friend Jody Peterman, when she was on, if you go back to Jody's episode, Jody was the one that introduced me to the Ho'oponopono prayer. It's a lot. It's a whole mouthful to say that, but it's the forgiveness prayer. And I used to preach like, "Hey man, you got to forgive yourself." And I thought I was like, I had really worked hard to make sure that I'd forgive myself. And the thing that the Ho'oponopono prayer, I think I got it right. There's a lot of ponos in there. The thing that strategy teaches you, and if you follow it, is you go back into that moment of, and like for myself was, I had to go back to little 4-year-old Jeff. If you look at my Instagram thumbnail right now, it's the picture of me, and I was scrolling pictures, and just trying to figure out, like, there was some uncertainty in my life, and I knew, like, is there something going on? And I was scrolling, and I made eye contact with that picture, and I was like, that's who I've been looking for. And it was a 4-year-old version of me, and just somewhere where who he probably went through way more than he should have, and he's the guy that learned to try to help as many people as he could, and all he wanted to do is play trucks, and but a little bit of just conflict between the situation back then, and life has absolutely turned out well for me, but a little bit of conflict between the situation back then leaned into um, leaned into what I'm getting ready to tell Joshua here. So I'm just rambling. I'm picking
I'm
up where you
so
left off.
sorry.
It's all right, man. It's the internet, man. This is what I was going to tell you, and I was telling the
Sure.
audience. I was telling the audience just to fill in on that. You were talking about your childhood, and why I was asking that is, my friend Jody Peterman taught me the Ho'oponopono prayer. Have you heard of that one, Joshua?
No, tell me it, please,
All
Jeff.
right. So the cool thing was, and I didn't either. Like you always hear, have you ever had people say, "Hey, you need to just forgive yourself, Joshua. Forgive yourself."
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
You heard that?
yeah,
So
yeah.
the Ho'opono prayer takes you deep into where you go back to, and you sit down, and it's I'm sorry. Hang on here. I love you. I'm sorry. I love you. Oh, crap. Oh, let me look it up here. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. All right. And you're saying
Mm,
it to yourself. Okay. But here's the magic that I didn't realize existed. I was kind of struggling. She had told me that, and it was perfect timing. I had some things on my mind, and I went back to an old photo album that my mom had gave me, and I just
mm,
started flipping pictures, and I was looking, and I made eye contact. If you look at my Instagram, my thumbnail now, it's a little kid.
yeah,
That's the kid that I found. I was like, oh, okay, here, hang on, I've been looking for you, and I just sat down
yeah,
with that picture and I told him, I was like, listen, man, this is what you turned out to be. This is where you
yeah,
are now. This is all the cool things you got. And I just apologized to that 4-year-old kid of me and said, listen,
yeah,
all the things, all the blame, all the things that you thought was your fault back then wasn't, man.
yeah,
And you didn't know what you
yeah,
didn't know. So I'm sorry and I
yeah,
forgive you. And
yeah,
dude, man, you want to talk about like I thought I had some weight lifted off my shoulders.
yeah,
I went back to some real hard moments in my childhood and then up through my adult life. And I would, if a negative moment pops in your head on like when you're dealing with your own uncertainty and you're dealing with that good enough, is
yeah,
go to that version of whatever that's kind of nagging at you and just sit down with them in your head and just say, hey man, I'm sorry. Please forgive
yeah,
me. Thank you. I love you. You didn't know what you didn't know then.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm glad I got to share that with you because it was shared with me. And,
yeah.
it's perfect to use with your men's group on those guys that struggle with what stuff that happened as a kid.
Yeah, yeah, it all, yeah. It's the follow the feeling back question is like it's such a powerful
Yeah.
question, and another one is, how old does that feeling feel?
Uh,
Um, and actually, I was in a group the other day, and we did that exact thing, and a guy was talking about something that was going on for him, and he's in his late 50s now, and there's a new pressure that's taking place in his life, and he was feeling a lot of fear, and we asked him, how old does that fear feel? And he was like, oh, it's a 7-year-old boy who just wants to know that he's taken care of. And it was
yeah.
powerful, man, powerful to know that, because I always say that the problems that are often right in front of us aren't the actual problems, because if you wake up another day and you feel on top of the world, you're going to look at that problem completely differently. So it's not to do with the actual thing that's in front of you. It's to do with whatever's going on inside of you. So I love that. I love that prayer. Um, and it's certainly not the prayer. So I'm definitely going to integrate that in. But something that I've learned to do for myself is whenever those feelings come up, something that I find really powerful is imagining that little child in me is standing next to me, and just I put my hand down to my side and I just imagine I'm holding his hand, because I often feel that whenever I have these kind of like inner conversations with these parts of me, the younger parts of me, they don't really know what they want. They don't even know they want me to say I'm sorry, but like a 5-year-old child like wants me to hold his hand,
Yeah.
wants to know that physical touch that he's safe. And so that's been such an amazing simple thing, just like the forgiveness, just like that prayer. It's just such a simple thing to come back to, and it's amazing how much it lightens the load.
Yeah, dude, I wanted to ask you, I got a couple things I wanted to ask you before we
Sure.
wrap here, but is there a common theme with the men that's coming into your program? Do you see a common theme or is it all over the place?
I mean, there are definitely themes, um and kind of it does boil ultimately down to not feeling enough. But the kind of the more like tangible problems that men come facing is, it's either lacking a sense of purpose, feeling really lost and lacking a sense of purpose. It might be to do with like relational challenges, obviously big ones are parents, but then there's a lot of dads who I come and see, and with young families, and so the pressure of having to show up as a partner and a husband, but also showing up and providing with money and work as well, and the tension that creates between you and your partner is a really, really big one for a lot of men. And what would be one more if I was to pick one more? No, I think I'm going to leave it there. I think it's relational problems, or it's a
Yeah.
sense of purpose for a lot of men.
I had, I was, my friend Tyler Hoover, he's a host and runs the Anti-Hero podcast. It's law enforcement,
Mm,
military based, a huge
mm,
following. And they always, I got to be in the room with them, and they're just strong minded. They're operators.
mm,
They are they're men's men, like a lot of alpha male,
mm,
right?
mhm.
It's a heavy group, and the question came up about, just like you said, of the groups that exist where people go and pay part of brotherhoods, and they go and
Yeah,
pay. And he was like, I just don't understand why someone would go pay for these experiences and military experiences, and just to get their butt kicks and pay a bunch of money when they can just
yeah,
join the army. And I was like,
yeah,
dude, you don't. I'm like, you're fortunate. You get to be around some of the baddest of bad, and
yeah,
you don't. A lot of times, you're so surrounded by that, you may not see what the rest of the world is, because the rest of the world is
yeah,
sometimes struggling, and
yeah,
they don't know how to get out of their own way, and they need the more Tylers and his friends of the world to come along and be like, hey, do this, get out, stop being
yeah.
a wimp, stop, pick yourself up, get out of your feelings, and let's take some action here. Um, I think there's something to be said for that, because there's two sides, right?
Absolutely. Look, this is a world of doing, but it's a world of being. And I think actually the problem for a lot of men is they're so stuck in feeling, and I was caught in this loop as well, of having to do, having to achieve, having to produce, having to succeed, that the solutions come from just doing, 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 doing. And there's not enough space to just be. Be in silence, be with feelings, be around a fire, be in nature, be with other people. And it's amazing, I would say, to be doing lots of things, but from this deeper place of knowing myself and being okay with who I am. And I think if we just live in a world of doing, then I'm not sure that we're going to create the world that we really want for ourselves. It will be busy and it might be productive, but I don't know how fulfilling and meaningful it will be.
Yeah, definitely, man. Tell me this. We're let's speak to that person. For that man who feels burnout, disconnected, not enough. What's that first step you would encourage them to take?
Yeah, I get asked this quite a bit. I mean, I would say firstly, if you're feeling fear or self-judgment or any sort of discomfort about the idea that maybe you could do with something like this, then that is totally normal, and they are brilliant feelings to be feeling, because what those feelings indicate is that actually you're at an edge. Fear and resistance and shame and all of these emotions that try and keep us small are doing that to try and protect us from who we really want to be. So just first and foremost, if you're feeling any of those things, if you felt any of those things, if you've disliked me, if you've noticed any part of you that has resisted any part of this conversation today, then just notice that. And that's brilliant, because that means that actually there's something in this that something in you is trying to keep you away from. Um, so just notice that and be okay with that. And that's normal. The second thing I would say is drop the need that the thing that you want to do next, whether it's a men's group or seeing a coach or a therapist or joining the army or joining the local football team or whatever it is, drop the need that needs to be the thing, the solution, the answer to your problems. Because the thing that you just need to do, speaking of doing, is just do something. Find something. And the last thing is start as small as possible. You know, if joining a group or seeing a therapist or any of the stuff that I leaped into just because I love this stuff is too much, then figure out what's the smallest thing you can do. And the ingredient for that, I would say, is find the thing that you're going to be excited about, that's going to give you energy, and notice when you're there how the people there make you feel. If they make you feel lighter and full of energy and make you believe in yourself a little bit more, then keep going down that path. There will come a time where you'll want to put yourself in environments where you feel the opposite. Like I'm in a men's group right now where there's a guy in it, and it's my own personal group where this guy triggers the shit out of me. He like brings up all sorts of stuff in me, but I'm doing that now, you know, nearly 8 years into this work. And so I know how to be around that. And that for me is something I want to do. But I would just say, to begin with, just find places where you enjoy the people that you're hanging around. Yeah.
Joshua,
So
if
they would
someone
be
wants
my
to get in
steps.
touch with you, if someone wants to get in touch with you as we wrap up
Yeah.
here, first
Yeah.
off, thank you, man. I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate the conversation. Folks, sorry about the snafu on the technology. The
Yeah.
internet
Sorry
works in
about
mysterious ways, but it's one of those things. But
that.
how can folks get in touch with you as we wrap up here?
Yeah, so I'm not really on social at all. You'll find me on LinkedIn. I'll post some stuff on there so you can connect with me on there if you like. But if you want to reach out to me, then visit the website www.bemoremensch.com. Don't even have to say www. How do I sound? Visit bemoremensch.com. Hopefully that'll be in Jeff's show notes.
It
And
is.
you'll find my contact details on there. So reach out to me. I always have a half an hour call with anyone who wants to find out more about this world. And that's about this world. That's not even about Mensch. So, you know, if you're from the US, I spoke to a guy last week who heard me on another podcast who lives in Washington, and the times don't quite work for the online sessions I run. So I hooked him up with a couple of friends I know who are on the East Coast of the States who do incredible work in this space. So if you just want to take a first step to explore it without any pressure of it having to be with me, then reach out and hopefully I can help you find the right place for you.
Man, that's awesome, dude. Definitely take advantage of that. If you look in the comments, if you're watching this after the fact and you can't remember any of that, the link to Joshua's LinkedIn and his website is marked in the comments of our live stream here. So you'll find them there, and then if you'll see it in the show notes as well. So, man, thank you. Appreciate all the work you're doing. Can't
Thank you.
wait at some point in time, come back on. Let's do a little case study or what have you, and just keep talking about the good work that you're doing. So keep going, man. You're not done, and I really appreciate the time you give us today.
I appreciate you having me on, Jeff. Thank you so much, and keep doing your work. It's you know, giving a voice to people like me. So love it, man. Keep going. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you, brother.